When did this
Preach it,
turn into a
sister.
therapy session? I thought we were going to talk about Kevin
Are we getting you in
Stefanski
trouble
and
now?
Jim
Is this going to be a
Woods.
problem?
Yeah,
It's okay.
that's where Aditi wants to pivot to football, and we shall. We
Okay.
shall. Aditi, so we were having the conversation with Mary Kay a little bit ago because Jim Donovan brought this point up yesterday. He was pretty emphatic about it. He just said, it perhaps is time that the Browns pivot and start drafting smarter players. What's your take on that?
I find it difficult to believe that that doesn't go into their evaluation. I hate to call it a dumb team because I've been around dumb teams. I don't think that that's really their fatal flaw here. But I mean, there's something to be said. It sort of speaks to when a coach comes in and wants to remake a team. And more we're hearing about guys who really want coaches who really want certain characteristics,
Right.
be it how hard-nosed they are, be it what their effort is, be it how heady they are, be it how much they love football. Robert Saleh said he needs a team of guys where every single one loves football. My colleague, AJ Ross, told a great story on the sideline of this past weekend's Bengals-Browns game about Zach Taylor creating a clip reel where literally every single player that played for the Bengals against Kansas City had at least one hustle play. And so he put together this reel of every guy making an extraordinary effort. And I think there's a major statement in that. I don't know how many guys ultimately got snaps in that game, but let's say it was 45. If you can find 45 different guys giving major effort in one game, well, that speaks to the type of team he wants, what he wants his team to be.
Sure.
And again, I'm using Robert Saleh because I know that for him, it's really, 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 I need guys that love the game of football, that they're here not for a paycheck. They're here because they just love playing and they love the opportunity that is in front of them. And so, I mean, it's fair to say that Jim Donovan just wants a bunch of guys who are maybe in Andrew Berry's mold, really, really, really smart guys. I just think it's very easy for us to sometimes, when a team is playing bad, to point to a player not being intelligent or a player not being dumb, or sorry, not being dumb, but being not so bright. And that I don't know that that's the root. When I think of all the things that have gone wrong with the Browns, Jay, is that what you see? Do you look at this team and say this is a dumb team?
Well, I do see the same mistakes happening multiple times deep into the season. And I don't know that it's necessarily a defining characteristic of this team. I just know that I trust Jim and his view of what's happening so much that, and we talk regularly. I'll ask him questions in the newsroom. What do you see here? What do you think here? And I believe Jim Donovan is a football savant. I really do. I think the way he sees
if
the
he
game
says
is
that
incredible.
and he's at practice, yeah, so let's give him his due. He's at practice, right? I'm not at practice every day. I don't know what the coaching is. I don't know what the teaching is.
Sure.
And I'll give you a story. I remember talking earlier in the year with a Steelers lineman about John Mitchell. John Mitchell was the first player to integrate Alabama. He was a long time coach. He's now Mike Tomlin's chief of staff. But he was a defensive line coach in Pittsburgh for a long time. And I remember when something would go wrong, not even when something would go wrong, but just as habit, just as practice, John Mitchell started every single practice. He expected his defensive lineman out earlier before anybody else. And he started every practice with the basic fundamentals. The things that you do in training camp, and then you often forget about because you're so busy implementing a game plan for that week. But John Mitchell never let the crossing of the T's and the dotting of the I's go. Every single week, he was making sure his guys drilled on the fundamentals. And it doesn't happen right now with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you can see what the Ravens just did, Ravens, who you were about to see, just did in running all over the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think sometimes it has to do with the coaching and the development of the players as much as it does with the player themselves. I mean, this is why coaches make money too. The only thing I'd say there is that if Jim Donovan, who is at practice regularly, is saying, no, these guys are indeed being taught, they're indeed being told the same thing, they're being told the same thing in different ways, and none of it is sticking, well, then I surely defer to him. If that's what it is, then that's what it is. And I think that you guys are right in that this year certainly is highlighting certain things that the Browns are missing or needing. And a lot of it doesn't have to do with basic talent, but with something else, with that other piece that you're referencing, that intangible.
Yeah, that's why I think there's validity in what Jim is saying. When we assessed this team in August, we looked at the talent, we looked at the individual pieces and parts, and for some reason, the sum of those parts hasn't added up to what we thought they would.
And again, it may not be necessarily stupid, but maybe they don't have high football IQ.
Stupid's a harsh word. Jimmy never said that. Jimmy didn't even really speak to what was going on with these players. His overall point was, he said you can draft fast players. You can draft players that can do this and you can do that. But this organization needs to look at drafting smarter players.
Yeah.
And for Jimmy to say that, Jimmy is fairly reserved in his criticism. I think Jimmy is as fair as a play-by-play gets. What I love about Jimmy is that when he sees something that's wrong, he's not going to sugarcoat it because his check is coming from the team. He, more than anyone that I have seen, I think Michael Kay does a really good job of this with the Yankees. He'll be critical of the Yankees if he needs to be. And I think Jimmy is the voice of the fan. When he's in that box, if he sees a pile of crap, he's going to say it.
Yeah.
And so
he's got a little Joe Tate in him. Remember?
He
you
does.
ever listen to Joe Tate?
I love Joe Tate. Joe Tate was my favorite play-by-play guy.
Play-by-play guy.
He did
for
everything
the
in Cleveland at
yes,
one point.
Yes, he did. You're right.
He did Indians, Browns, and Cavs.
But towards the end, he was just doing the Cavs,
Cavs,
and he had gotten so surly at that point.
He didn't
and
care.
I loved him. He didn't.
He did not care.
Yeah.
He would call it what it was. And Jimmy has that cachet with this organization. Right. Jimmy is, in my view, absolutely untouchable. He has that job for life.
Yeah, he's not going to get fired.
And he can say whatever he wants, and the organization, I hope, would know better than to ever even tell him, Jimmy, tone it down.
Yeah.
Jimmy's tone is perfect.
He's the
and
one
when he
unfireable
says something
person.
like this, to me, it always moves my meter. He convinces me of things all the time. Mm-hmm. And by the way, he has said that, that he's said steadfast all year. Deshaun Watson just throws a different ball. When he's out there throwing the ball, it comes out of his hand differently. It looks different. Everything is different. This guy is the guy.
Yep.
And so I trust him when he says that. And when he says that the organization may have to pivot and start drafting smarter players,
right.
It tells me that he's either making that assessment through what he's seeing with his eyes or what he's hearing with his ears in and around the facility. And I think that's why I was so curious to get Aditi's take on it and Mary Kay's take on it, because I just think Jimmy is usually, his wind vane is usually pointing in the way that it should.
Aditi, the rest of the season, we are obviously pretty sure that we're just working towards next year, as you know, unless obviously like if Jacksonville ties with the Chargers and then if Turkey wins the World Cup, I think then the Browns might be able to keep going. But what I'm saying is it's over. Do you agree that we should be shutting down Myles Garrett for the rest of the year? Why risk injury to him? Why would we be risking anybody right now who we are concerned about having next year at full capacity?
Well, I think that I don't know that Myles Garrett would agree to that. I don't think that he's willing to throw in the towel until
I'm sure he's not.
No, I know, but
his comments after the game,
Baker
opposite.
But Baker wasn't willing to come out 2 years ago, and last year.
He was willing to come out the last game of the year when everybody else played.
Well,
yeah,
what
but
I'm saying is,
I think that again, but I think that that's a completely different comparison. I think that you're setting a tone for the following year too. I think that the way that you end one year absolutely can bleed into how you start the next year. I mean, that story has been told repeatedly by multiple players on multiple teams that it had to do with what the finish was. It's how you feel about the whole offseason as you go into the offseason. It's about the buy-in as you go into that. And then let's not forget, I mean, you still have people paying for tickets. They want to come and see the team. They want to see your superstar. They want to see the guy that you broke the bank for. And there are a few of those guys that the Browns have broken the bank for. I think until Myles is unable to go or somebody medically says that Myles is doing more damage to himself by playing than by not playing.
Right.
I mean, the last time I talked to him, Myles didn't even say that surgery was 100% definite. That was sort of a wait and see. And I think that he has too much pride to give up on the season. And especially, I think, because it was an off-the-field injury, the shoulder, that probably compels him even more to keep pushing through.
Does it change the play calling, though, for Stefanski? Do you not leave him out there for those final plays in the fourth quarter that you might have otherwise?
I mean, maybe. I think that that's valid, but I don't think that they're even engaging in that because they're hoping that they're playing with leads or they're hoping that they're winning or they're in a position to secure a win. I wouldn't write everything off. Look, the Browns are at home. This is Deshaun Watson's first game in Cleveland this weekend. And who are the Ravens starting? A guy that was throwing the ball so badly in pregame against the Pittsburgh Steelers that they had the long snapper throwing passes?
Yeah.
I mean, is that who's going to play quarterback? Is it their third string quarterback, or is Tyler Huntley going to be okay? Do we really even know just yet? And then you've got the Saints coming in. It's not like the Saints have been setting anybody on fire. And every time you think, okay, well, that was just a bad week for the Dolphins, they're going to right the ship, then look at what happens to them against the Chargers. I mean, again, no one is running away with anything right now.
The Browns, we know the Browns are not going to the playoffs, but they're not mathematically eliminated, so you're never going to shut down before you're mathematically eliminated. All their games left are winnable. All their games left are losable. They're all kind of middle-of-the-road teams or worse that they're playing. They could go 4-0. They could go 0-4. Who the hell knows? Last thing, Aditi, before we go, I am finally going to be right. Well, finally, I was wrong last year, but the Steelers are finishing under 500. One more loss. One more loss, and they finish under 500. It is going to happen. Are you excited? Will you celebrate with me? I'm having a party.
I mean, I'm excited to not have to hear about it anymore because, quite frankly, I personally think it's the most meaningless stat ever. I've already said this. You know, there was way too much talent on this team to have 3 playoff wins in 12 years.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, like, being relevant at the end of the season, okay, that's nice for 5 years or 6 years or 7 years. But when it's been 12 years and you have nothing to show for it, I mean, look, when I first got to this town, Mike Tomlin said that this was a team that was hunting Lombardi trophies, and nothing mattered more than that. That's the lecture that he gave Antonio Brown years ago when Antonio Brown had every single record and looked like he was on pace to have, which he did have, a 6-year run better than any other receiver in the history of the game. Mike Tomlin said to him, none of that matters. Touchdowns, catches, yards, you should be in this game for one reason and one reason alone, and that is to win a Lombardi trophy. Okay, well, the Steelers haven't even sniffed that. So I'm a little bit tired of hearing that Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season. How many playoff wins has he had? Not many. Like, I think that's the way that you should be looking at it. They
for the past decade, they've been the Andy Dalton Bengals. But because they're the Steelers, nobody will say it. That's what they are.
Well, you know, and it's interesting. I know I need to go, but I'll say that somebody a local radio host made that point, that other than Marvin Lewis, who could have a playoff record like Mike Tomlin has had over the last 12 years, and nobody even raises an eyebrow.
Have the Pittsburgh fans turned on Tomlin? Like, is this the vibe, total vibe?
It seems that way.
I mean, that's been a thing for like a decade. There are people that love him and get so angry if you ever question him, and there are people that just want to run him out of town.
That's
and
great.
Look,
Glad
there's
we're not the only divided fan base.
This is not a black or white. I do believe that Mike Tomlin is a tremendous coach. I also believe that he needs better assistants, that he has some great assistants. Terrell Austin is a great assistant. Brian Flores is a great assistant. Mike Sullivan is a great assistant. But he also, I mean, again, it's insane to me that Mike Tomlin has no coaching tree. That he never gets these young assistants that are these great creative minds that go on to ascend. Do you know that only one coach that has ever worked for Mike Tomlin later went on to become a head coach?
Yeah,
that's the guy he fired, Bruce Arians.
You're exactly right.
Literally.
That's a huge knock. Especially a guy who comes from Tony Dungy's tree.
There is a middle ground there. I do think that Mike Tomlin is the right man for the job, but I do think that ownership needs to talk to Mike Tomlin about certain things that need to change or get better or be reevaluated.
I don't think they should talk to him at all.
Because
crappy assistants.
I mean, I think it's all part of growth. And anyway, all right, guys.
Aditi, thanks.
Thank you
I
for
hope
putting up with me. Thank you for the Christmas advice. Bull, call Matt later for me.
I will.
Aditi, I hope your house gets in order soon. I know that's hectic. You're a very patient soul.
Never. Thank you.
My new